Hello, I'm Crystal Bergfield, and I've been guided to share a reading that I recently did, channeling the energy moving into 2022, specifically around social justice. And the deck that I'm using is called Brady Tarot, and it's a deck that is rooted in nature and specifically animals, plants, insect life in North America. And this reading is specific to the US and social justice in the US. If you know me at all, you know that I am very passionate about social justice, and especially here at home in the US. And this is one of the ways that I know that I'm able to contribute to furthering the cause. So let me get right into it. I'm so excited. I did this reading. I wasn't sure if I should share it or not, but the message is yes, share it. So I do a 6-card spread, and I start with where we are now, what will get us on our journey, and then I'll keep going. But basically, what will challenge us, what will support us, what we'll discover, and what we will become. So this is at a collective level, but as I'm speaking, there are individual undertones here, right? When it comes to social justice, we can't just hope and pray for social justice. We have to work towards it. And while we know that, for example, the justice system is not currently just, us just saying like, okay, justice system, let's get it together and change, that won't do it. Individuals have to act to change the justice system. People who work within the justice system need to start making different decisions, acting differently, showing up differently on the job. Voters need to be cognizant and aware of how they're voting. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Let's dive into what the energy is coming for 2022. So we begin with the Mother of Arrows, which is also the swords. If you go by the traditional tarot. So this is the Mother of Arrows. She is vigilant. She is aware, hyper alert. She is protective. I received this card upside down. So to me, that means that there is another message there. Where we are right now as a collective, we are defensive. We are guarded, and rightfully so. Especially looking at media today, we don't know what is truth. We don't know who to believe, when to believe things. We don't know if we're being attacked at all angles, so we just put up our walls. And when it comes to social justice, there is a lot shifting, there's a lot uncovering, and for some of us, it can be really uncomfortable. For a majority of white America, who have had all of the power in this country since its inception, since the United States inception, right before white men showed up on this land. It was there were other people living here, but since the United States inception, white folks have held power, and so now with this shift of social justice coming to the forefront, really, even Black Lives Matter specifically challenging that, other organizations and groups of people who are challenging white folks' power, it can make us defensive. It can make us hyper alert. And so that doesn't always mean it's a good thing, because when we get hyper alert, it can keep us in that defensive space. It can keep us there so much that we start to live in fear. And that's not what we want. But this is where we are. We're in defense, okay? So if this is where we are, what is going to send us on our journey? And why should we even go on a journey in the first place? What's going to get our asses up off the couch and go on this journey? Work. And this is the 3 of Roots, which is rooted in work, right? So a few messages here in this card. What's going to send us on our journey? first of all, the acknowledgement that some of the work in our past is not serving us any longer. Some of the foundations that were built, the work that was done in the beginning, does not serve us, and it's no longer good for us. So we have to acknowledge that part of our past was problematic, and what was done in the past has been brought forward. We, all of us are maintaining these systems of injustice just by showing up and saying, yeah, I'll follow along, or yeah, I guess that's how we do things, so I'll just stay quiet. I don't want to make waves, right? That's continuing these cycles of injustice. And so we have to acknowledge first that, yeah, okay, I didn't mean to do this, or I just showed up on the scene. I was born into this, so not my fault, but I'm still a part of the problem, unless I decide to be a part of the solution, and in comes the work, right? So another piece of this card is that what's going to send us on our journey is actually doing work, showing up, not just for ourselves, but for others, recognizing that there's a rift between a lot of groups of people in this country. We can talk race, we can talk gender, we can talk sexuality, but we can also talk politics. I mean, like, we can talk vaccine. There's so many ways that we're divided right now. And so we have to acknowledge that there's work to be done in social justice, and we have to be a part of it in some way. We all have a different way to be a part of that, but we certainly all have a part to play. And then the last and the most beautiful piece to this, I think, is if you see the lattice work here at the top of the card, it's almost like a cathedral, right? Or a temple. So it indicates that there is a higher purpose in this work. And that is the truth. The work that social justice is humanitarian work. It's spiritual work. It's work of our higher selves. And in doing social justice work, it elevates us on our path. It takes us on up, going to church. Okay, so that's what is going to send us on our journey, the work, the idea of work, the past work, the confrontation of past work, the acknowledgement of failed work, and the acknowledgement that we need to put in some work, okay? So if we know we're going on a journey this year, 2022 is our journey, what is going to help us? What is going to challenge us? Yeah. This one is super tough. I felt myself called out on this one. Discipline, which is the 8 of Roots. We're getting several root cards. This is our second root card here, right? That means like we need to do some like getting down to earth and recognize that we're all here on this planet and be here now. We hear that all the time, right? But certainly this idea of discipline is one that will challenge many of us. Discipline is a requirement. The discipline to, when you get on social media, not to jump into the defensive when somebody says something, but just to either scroll on by or make a decision that you're going to do work outside of social media to be the change or something else, right? But their discipline is something that takes work, and you have to stay at it. And the really beautiful thing that I like about this card is that you see the bottom, those are actually bees that are working together in their hive to bring in everything that's needed, right? It's a reminder for us that we are all connected. We are all a part of the society together. And so when just like in the bees, right? If a part of the hive dies or is sick, then the other part of the hive has to pick up the work or has to go and tend to these people. And these other bees. And so they're all affected by one another. The same is true in society. When one group of people is being oppressed, the other others that are not being oppressed are somehow affected, right? It could be that, if there's a group of people that's oppressed and the others are not oppressed, then we're looking to those that are not oppressed to help out. And that's how it should be. That's the idea of society, is that we all acknowledge that we're a part of this and we work together. So discipline is going to challenge us. Can you rise to the challenge? That's the question. All right, then what will help us? I loved this one. I was really shocked by it because I've never pulled this one in my own personal readings, but I really think it's beautiful. It's breach. And so if you see here, there's a dam. You see these two beavers here up at the top. They're actually asleep. They've built this whole dam, but they're sleeping, and now there's a breach in their dam and the water is starting to break. So if the beavers wake up and they act quickly, then they'll just have a few small problems to fix. But if they don't, they'll have a crisis on their hands and they'll have to rebuild the entire dam. Now, what does that remind you of in our society? Right now, we have a breach in our education system, in our justice system, in our healthcare system, in our political system. Shall I go on? We have these breaches, these places where things are cracking the foundation of education, for example, right? Now, if we address it now, if we really look at it and understand where things are not serving us any longer, really looking at where is racism within the roots or the foundation of education or justice system, and then find mend that, right? Mend that, heal that, we'll be able to fix the problem. But if we don't, we will have a true crisis on our hands. And I hate to say it, but there's been a lot of talk in recent years of the fall of the United States, that we are in late-term capitalism and we will eventually fall. We wouldn't be the first civilization to fall. But I'm telling you, if we do the work, if we stay disciplined, we can address the issues before they become crises, and we can come together. So here's our opportunity. This will help us looking at things, waking up. Literally, the beavers are asleep. Wake up and look at stuff. I just thought it was perfect. So that's what will help us. Okay, what will we discover? The moon. The moon. I'm trying to make sure you all see it very clearly there. Move back just a little. There we go. Okay, so the moon, this is a very natural card. I actually did receive this one upside down, so I had a couple of messages here for this one. In general, the moon is related to the feminine side, but it's in U.S. culture, we have a tendency to see the moon as related to darkness, shadows, the unconscious, and we like to judge those things as bad, right? So what are we going to discover when we look at these breaches? We're going to discover our shadows, our dark side. And for a lot of us, that's going to be very uncomfortable. Again, back to those white folks, those people who have been in power. And I don't mean you specifically as a white person. I didn't specifically build the justice system, but I have the benefit of the justice system because it was built to protect and to serve white people in this country. That's white privilege. I didn't have to build it to have the privilege of not getting pulled over while driving for a busted headlight, or just because the police officer was curious to meet me. Although I did have a police officer once stop me because I was driving a 1981 Volkswagen Rabbit, and he stopped me. This is in Colorado. And he didn't need anything. He just wanted to look at the car because that was his first car. Okay. Anyway, outside of that, in seriousness, there's real privilege that has been happening. And so for a lot of us, it's going to be very uncomfortable when we continue, I will say continue to uncover these shadows, because the truth is a lot of things have started to be uncovered, which is beautiful, because once we look at it, then we can sort it out. You can't do anything if we're not looking at it. So we got to look at it. Okay, the other message that really comes through for this moon is that in all reality, the feminine side, but also the shadow side of us, this unconscious side, is part of us. Now, if we try to hide it, they always say what's done in the dark will always come to light, right? So we can't hide it for too long. But if we try to avoid it, or we get defensive about it, or we defend it, right? We defend that, whatever that is, that shadow, that keeps us stuck. And more than it keeps us stuck, it keeps us separated, because it just does. It just does. But when we acknowledge that that's actually just part of us, it's where we are coming from, it's part of our evolution, right? Like the foundation of our country was built how it's built. I can't go back in time and change how it was built, but I can acknowledge that, okay, this thing was definitely built for white folks. It was definitely built for men in this country. It was definitely built to keep the wealthy wealthy. If I can acknowledge those things and come to peace with them, it helps me. It gives me a starting point for where I want to go and where I can get to. And it really takes our defenses down. Like, oh, okay, I was born into this. I didn't choose to do this or to be this, but now I have choice. And so I'm going to do something about it. So we will discover the moon. Which could take us back to the 60s, right? And then you had the women's movement, the women's liberation. Like, so great. I didn't even think about that until now. All right, and then what will we become? I loved this one. Oh my gosh, this is gorgeous. Union, which is the Two of Cups, water, relationships, flowing. And this one is a pair of albatrosses, and it's their mating ritual. But it's just joy. And the point of this union is joyful union, new relationship. And that is, I just was like, I'm sorry, I don't want to scream because my baby is sleeping. But I got so excited when I saw this beautiful card, because if we actually do the work, if we move past our defensiveness, do the work, stay disciplined, look at our breaches, be willing to look at our shadows and accept them as what they were, we will come together. We just have to do our own work. That's the thing about social justice work, is that everybody has different work to do. As a white woman, I have so much different work to do than a black woman. Or as a woman specifically, I have different work to do than a man has to do. In general, right? So we all have our own unique work to do. And when we do it, and when we stay on the grind, we stay disciplined, and we recognize that we're all in this together, we're all little bees here, and we all just trust that everyone's doing the best they can and doing their work, it comes out beautifully on the other side. And I can tell you from other relationships that there has to be trust, and there has to be this acknowledgement that, okay, I'm going to accept that they are doing their best, and they're doing all that they can do, and I'm going to do all I can do. And some of us have a lot that we can do, and some of us have a little that we can do, but we can all do something. So that's the forecast for 2022. If you should choose to accept the challenge to step on to this journey of social justice. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful 2022.